Today we're talking about a couple of the more controversial fragrances in the market. I'm giving you my thoughts on Office and Date for Men from Fragrance One. Stick around. Fellas, welcome back. It's Robert, your everyday gentleman. So I've been curious about these fragrances for a while. Now I've heard good and I've heard bad, but with fragrance being so subjective and based on your personal preferences, I really wanted to get my nose on it so I can form my own personal opinion. And the thing that kept me from doing it up until now is the price tag. I really didn't want to spend that much on this fragrance as a blind buy. But now that they offer these small travel sizes, and especially since they're buy one get one free, I figured now's the time to pull the trigger. So after using these for a couple weeks, I'm gonna share with you my personal thoughts and experience with each of these. Now if you're new to my channel, I wanna welcome you. If you're interested not only in fragrance, but also things like men's style, grooming, fitness, whiskey, cigars, and other topics for the everyday man, then this might be the place for you. Consider subscribing and joining the growing EG family. And if you're already a member, I want to thank you for your continued support. And without further delay, let's jump into it. Okay, so let's talk about the first release first. This is Office for Men. Now, if for some reason you aren't already familiar with Fragrance One, the fragrance brand was started by the famous YouTuber Jeremy Fragrance, which I'm sure you probably already have heard of. And his goal was to create fragrances that are meant to be really the only fragrance you need for a particular setting. So far he has Date, which we'll get into next after I give you a little bit about my experience with Office. Now I've actually spent a little more time with Office. John over at 40 Over Fashion was kind enough to send me a sample of the fragrance a couple months ago. So thank you, John. By the way, I'll link his channel down below. My initial thoughts when I first smelled it was, I don't really want to say it's an Aventus clone, but I got an Aventus vibe from it, but also mixed with a bit of Sauvage in it. Now this fragrance is very citrusy with that bergamot really coming out in the opening. And then you also get some ambroxan, which kind of drives that Sauvage vibe, along with some floral and woody notes. Now it's definitely a nice scent. It's nothing I would say is unique or groundbreaking. I mean, Aventus has been done a number of times, and obviously Sauvage is so popular, and mixing those two together is just kind of clashing those two worlds. But it's not a bad scent at all. Now my wife wasn't the biggest fan of this. She didn't really say it was bad, but she also didn't say it was good. She was just kind of indifferent to it. Now performance-wise, this thing lasts a very long time, going well beyond the 8-hour mark on my skin. Now obviously, if you like the scent, then that's a good thing. But if you don't like it, then that's where things can get annoying. Now I will say though that I do like these little travel sizes. These aren't like generic decants that you sometimes get when you order sample sizes. They look like they were manufactured and bottled specifically for this brand, which, you know, they're pretty nice bottles. And then the atomizer isn't bad for a travel size. Now currently, if you're looking at a full-size bottle, which is 100 ml, the price is $179. And this size, which is 10 ml, currently runs for $32. Now before I tell you my final thoughts on Office, let's talk a little bit about the next fragrance, which is Date for Men. So Date for Men is a second release from this house, coming out in 2019. This one, as the name states, is supposed to be perfect for a date night. Now, my initial impression when I first smelled this fragrance is that it's not a bad scent, but it's also not very unique. It kind of reminded me of a darker version of 1 Million Lucky. I was getting the vibe of that plum and grapefruit, even though those aren't notes that are listed in the breakdown. But in the breakdown, this one has a lot of citrus with notes of mandarin, bergamot, and lemon. Now behind that, you're supposed to get some woody and spicy notes, which is supposed to give this some sexual masculinity. But to me, that was much more upfront than the citrus notes. Now performance-wise, this one did not last very long. It became a skin scent after a couple hours. However, that's not necessarily a bad thing for a date fragrance. Initially, with a date fragrance, you want it to project nice, you know, when the date is starting. But as the night continues, you want that fragrance to get a little softer and a little closer to the skin in case things start getting a little more intimate. Now I will say that my wife was not a fan of this at all. In fact, as I was working up this review, I sprayed it on the back of my hand, and I heard her as she was walking by the room asking if I had sprayed it, and not in a pleasant way. Now this fragrance is actually a little pricier than Office, coming in at $247 for the 100 ml, and the 10 ml is a little pricier too, coming in at $39. Now my final thoughts on Office and Date is this. Office although not very unique, is still a very nice scent. It's very versatile, good for everyday wear, and I think it fits an office setting extremely well. Date, on the other hand, was not that great. Like I mentioned, it kind of gives me that 1 million Lucky vibe, but the mix of notes in this just doesn't do it for me. It's definitely not a reach that I would go for a date. And if your significant other or whoever you're dating doesn't like it, then you're definitely not gonna reach for it, even if you like it. Now, ultimately, when it comes to price, I'm gonna say that these two are not a great value, especially when you're looking at office, which is not, again, a very unique scent. And then two, you have date, which, you know, doesn't really fit the setting that it's intended for. Bottom line, at this price point, these aren't fragrances that I would be picking up for myself, even with the buy one get one free that they offer. These little travel decants aren't a bad way to go if you want to try them out for yourself. Again, fragrances are personal. It comes down to your personal preference, so you may enjoy these more than I do, but I definitely personally wouldn't spring on a full-size bottle. Now, maybe if office was below $100, I might go for something like that, but date definitely is a no-go for me. But ultimately, these are my opinions, and you, of course, are entitled to your own. Let me know in the comments down below if you've tried these fragrances before and what your thoughts are on them. Now, as always, if you found value in this video, make sure you let me and YouTube know by hitting that like button. Subscribe, turn on notifications, share the video, and do all the things that help this channel continue to grow. And remember, being a gentleman is an everyday thing. See you in the next one, fellas.
We bop and hippity hop, I'm as happy as I can be. Whoa, boom.